Well, Eddie Kingston is fat. And I think most people are just now seeing it. Episode of Rampage, Eddie Kingston is wrestling Konosuke Takeshita. And people are looking at that and they said Eddie Kingston is fat. And his cardio ain't too good. So people have been roasting Eddie Kingston all weekend, the entire weekend of July the 10th through the 11th. Kingston has been getting roasted online for being fat. And it's been one of those things that's kind of gone back and forth. It's just like Adam Cole. The AEW fan base and some of the people who like Eddie Kingston personally have decided they were going to protect Eddie Kingston. They were going to defend Eddie Kingston. They were going to stand up for Eddie Kingston. And Eddie Kingston, of course, had a response. This response was before the brouhaha, really. But this was a series of tweets that actually made me do this video. Because before we get to Eddie Kingston's response, I want to give you the tweets that made me want to do this video. Quote, "For those defending out-of-shape AEW wrestlers like Adam Cole and Eddie Kingston, it is horribly disrespectful to take the exorbitant amount of money that Tony Khan pays you to work a light schedule and to not use the time and money he affords you to eat right, train, and get into shape for television where you play the role of combat fighters. You can cry body shaming all you like, but there's nothing stopping these bums from sorting themselves out. I mean, Jericho did it. The fact that these guys care so little about their employer that they're willing to go out and make the show look like a third-rate amateur hour indie fed should infuriate you. Instead of blaming the normal people who point this out the obvious, Kingston looks like a fat slob. Cole looks like a middle school kid. Do they have no pride?" And this tweet is the one that made me do this video because he makes an excellent point. Eddie Kingston really only has to work one match a week. Now, he chooses to work more. He does work indies. But you would think he gets paid quite a bit of change. He should be able to dedicate his spare time to getting into better shape. Now, again, we got to go back into, nobody expects Eddie Kingston to transform himself into Randy Orton. And I see we're going to talk about it. Everybody thinks that, oh, what about Dusty Rhodes? What about Vader and Bam Bam Bigelow? It's like, you look at Vader, look at Bam Bam Bigelow, look at Big Boss Man, even Bubba Ray Owens, Bam Bam Owens. There are big guys who have good cardio. There are big guys who are flexible and athletic. You know, they just happen to be endomorphs. They just happen to be bigger dudes. Eddie Kingston is not among them. All right. Eddie Kingston has no muscle definition in his arms and a belly. You know, Vader was big all over. You know, he could take bumps. He could fly. He could do his thing. Yokozuna, not my favorite wrestler, but he was flexible. You know, he knew how to work light. You know, there was no stories of Yoko absolutely crushing guys with his weight. Now, I'm not saying that Eddie Kingston is crushing guys, but when you look at Eddie Kingston's chops, you look at his finish, and you look at how he performs, the guy basically is the Homer Simpson of pro wrestling. And to be quite honest, it's something that it really shouldn't need to be said, but I think it's fair if I give Eddie Kingston's point of view. So Eddie Kingston says, "No one looks the same. If you start looking like the same, it gets real boring. Me, I got a little bit of a belly. I like to eat ice cream. I like Five Guys. I like pizza. I like to lift weights and do cardio, and I like to fight. I like to punch people in the face and chop people. I'm just me. I know this is an odd thing to say, but a lot of people who body shame or say negative stuff, besides being disgusting human beings because that's what get their rocks off, none of them will ever step in the ring. Not to fight, just to run the ropes or even get in there. They're like, that's not my job. Well, my man, you don't see me bothering you at your job, telling you how to clean the floor. Well, Eddie Kingston, if you walked into Five Guys and you saw that the floor was dirty, are you going to continue eating at that Five Guys, Eddie Kingston? No! 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 You won't. It's common sense. When people turn on their television and they see you, they could see a big, tough, bruising guy, which some people choose to see when they look at Eddie Kingston. Other people look at him and say, my God, he looks like a gas station attendant. He looks like a plumber. What is up with this guy? He looks like a carpenter. He's going to change the tiles on your floor. He looks like a guy who sits on the street corner smoking cigarettes and drinking beer out of a brown bag. Doesn't look like an athlete. Does he look like a tough guy? Sure. He looks like a guy who's been in prison. Sure, absolutely. He also looks like somebody's uncle. I'm talking uncle who spends most of his days underneath cars. I'm talking about an uncle who spends all day at the barbecue grill. Not somebody who looks like they've, been in jail and did some, like, with the jailhouse tattoos and lifted some weights or something like that. I couldn't tell Eddie Kingston lifted weights if you'd have told me. I wouldn't have known it. I wouldn't have known it. So, the fact of the matter is, I absolutely agree. Eddie Kingston should get in better shape. Anybody who wants to use, but what about Dusty Rhodes? What about Yokozuna and Vader and Bam Bam Bigelow? Like, look at those guys. Go watch a Bam Bam. If you say that, clearly you have never watched one of their matches and compare their performances to Eddie Kingston's performance. Because Dusty Rhodes, big fat guy, bigger than Eddie Kingston, fatter than Eddie Kingston, probably weighs probably about 40 or 50 pounds more than Eddie Kingston, even in his prime. But Dusty could go. Dusty had cardio. Dusty was in there with some cardio machines and was keeping up. Sure, he was fat. And I think in his later years, it started to bother him a lot more, which is what we're talking about here, because Eddie Kingston is 40. If you want to compare him to prime Dusty, no. Because maybe in Eddie Kingston, in his prime, wouldn't have been so fat. And I get it, it's harder to lose weight when you are in your late 30s. I know, trust me. So I'm not putting a lot of pressure on him. I'm not even saying he should change. I'm just saying it's true. He's fat. And his cardio is shit. But that doesn't mean he's not a good wrestler. I like Eddie Kingston. I think that as a microphone worker, he is fantastic. But I think that a lot of people absolutely feel the need to protect everybody. There is no such thing as legitimate criticism of AEW or any AEW wrestler. There is no such thing as legitimate criticism. Even something as obvious as Eddie Kingston's belly hanging over his belt line. There's nothing, you're not allowed to mention it. Not allowed to say anything about it. We're not saying he has to look like Austin Theory or Lashley. Nobody said that. People had to say, well, he could at least get in better shape. At least. At least go keto for a couple of... You got the money. Some people are pudgy because they ain't got no fucking money. Bread and rice is how they live. You just do it because you like it. And that's fine and all. But we've entered this age of there are no standards. There are no standards for wrestlers. And wrestling fans don't ask for any standards. Outside of, ridiculous moral standards, as we have seen with some of the other dramas that's been going on. So, shall we finally go on to the peanut gallery and look at some of the responses of Eddie Kingston being fat? Let's do it. Eddie Kingston is living proof AEW fanboys will cheer anything. Look, I like Eddie Kingston. Again, I think that he's very entertaining. I think that as a character, he's very believable. I think he's a great microphone worker. I just think he needs to get in better shape in terms of wrestling. And I think that his position in the company is pretty much indicative of what Tony Khan thinks about him. He sees him as a rampage guy, a middling sort of guy. While everybody else like, Eddie Kingston should be world champion. Tony Khan's kind of like, sure. He could be world champion theoretically, but he's not. Look, if it were me, and Eddie Kingston dedicated himself to losing, let's say 30 pounds, just 30. Not saying get wrapped up and cut up like Lex Luger. Just lose 30 pounds. I would give him the world title. Absolutely. Because what other reason would you not? His cardio would improve dramatically. His matches would get better immensely, almost immediately. Because he wouldn't be carrying around a lot of extra weight. So he would definitely be world championship material, even with the same arms. But if he just lost the gut, he would be fine. Again, right now he's shaped like, Homer Simpson. And I know that that's appealing to some people, But for other people, it's kind of like, no, it's not all that appealing to most people. People shitting on Eddie Kingston are just bitter because they're getting gender and dancing shanky or a model fashion show on their end. I don't think so, because the model fashion show has been trending on Twitter for some positive, some negative reasons. But most people, they shit on that kind of stuff. It's still funny and entertaining to talk about. Eddie Kingston is being positioned as being a real tough guy. But, you know, it's almost like that scene from Friday. Like, if you got into a real fight with Eddie Kingston, all you have to do is keep away from him. You know, you just kind of juke him like Barry Sanders. He'd eventually, I'm going to get you eventually, man. It's like, that's what people think when they think about Eddie Kingston. They think like, okay, well, if I run around a car a little bit, he'll tire himself out, then I can take him. People don't think like, oh shit. Like, yeah, Eddie Kingston might have a blade on him, but he still got to get close to you in order to get it. Unless he got a shotgun. You know, you got a pretty good chance on a fight against Eddie Kingston. All right. Unless he got a pistol or something like that. Even if he got a razor or a switchblade or something like that, you still got to get close. So, you know, I don't know, man. You don't have to love him, but Eddie Kingston is arguably the most pro wrestler at present. And I don't know, but I feel like if you can't see that, you're probably a fucking idiot. See, I think that the word pro wrestling has just become a catch-all for anything that I like. So it's like one of those things where, you know, like left wing and right wing politics, like Tommy Sowell says that what is the right wing really? And the left wing always defines what the right wing is. The left wing just purges things. Like they kick things out. Like feminists. They kicked feminists out within the last couple of years. So now feminists who believe that trans women are not real women, they're not considered right wing. So right wing doesn't get to define itself. It's just defined as whatever we don't like. The same thing now is pro wrestling. You know, pro wrestling has no real definition anymore because they accept everything. The blow up doll, the broom, the wrestling the invisible man, the thumbtacks, the shit to the head, you know, the kebab skewers to the head, barbed wire matches, explosions, all that kind of stuff. It's all pro wrestling now. So the only way for you to say something is not pro wrestling is to reject it. You know, we don't like this thing, therefore it's not pro wrestling, even though we say pro wrestling is essentially everything. Somehow, you know, wrestling a broom or a blow up doll or a small child is still somehow is pro wrestling. But, you know, big spectacles involving celebrities and things like that are not pro wrestling. It's stupid, right? But that's the world that we live in now. You know, some people think that Eddie Kingston is dating Ruby Soho. I think that's it meant to. I saw the promo, by the way, for the leading up to the barbed wire match. And that's why I really liked Eddie Kingston. I think that he did a really good job with that. I think that it's supposed to portray that they're really good friends and that, you know, they went, you know, through the journey together. I don't think it meant that they were dating because that would be weird. And plus, I don't think AEW does soap opera. They wouldn't do two people being together unless they're really together. And I think Eddie Kingston is married. So it says, it's mad how people can say stop bullying Shotzi. But when it comes to Adam Cole and Eddie Kingston, it's fine. Like, the fuck is wrong with you people? How is it wrong to bully one person, but talking shit about someone else's body is fine? I was okay with people talking shit about Shotzi. She's fucking up. You know? Look, you can't police the internet. People are going to say what they want to say. I think Shotzi botched a couple of spots. She didn't look good in that match. I think the people who were telling her she should be fired was being a bit of extreme. And nobody has said that Eddie Kingston should be fired. I haven't seen that. I haven't seen anybody say anything too negative about Eddie Kingston except for he's fat and his cardio was garbage or they just don't like him. You know? But nobody has ever said Eddie Kingston should be fired. I think most people just say Eddie Kingston needs to get in shape. He needs to lose some weight. He needs to, you know, do some sit-ups or something. But they're protecting Eddie Kingston like he's some kind of endangered species. Eddie Kingston has sold his wrestling boots and gave an impassioned promo in front of a crowd of tens in the middle of a field in New Jersey that changed his life. He has made the most of every situation since. Eddie Kingston slander equals block. He sold his wrestling boots and gave an impassioned promo in front of a crowd of tens. In front of a crowd of tens. How many? 90 people? 70? 40? 100? 110? And a crowd of tens? What? What? And people think this is a defense of Eddie Kingston. He gives an impassioned promo that only 70 people saw. What? In the middle of nowhere in New Jersey. What? This is defense of Eddie Kingston? Come on, brother. Oh, this guy works for William Regal. Okay. Oh, shit. First off, Eddie Kingston is more of an athlete than anyone using that argument, which is that Eddie Kingston doesn't look like an athlete. Now the reason Eddie can't run right is called selling. It's storytelling devices in pro wrestling. If you think AEW does not have stories, then you never watch AEW and kindly shut the fuck up. The term mark is, and it cuts off because he used too much more of this. Somebody says, I can see the AEW cult is in defense mode about Eddie Kingston. Look, I ain't mocking his weight, but the dude isn't an athlete. He can't even run properly. And this is when Eddie Kingston stumbled as he was running towards Chris Jericho and the Jericho Appreciation Society. Look, it happens. Guys trip over their own feet. I'm gonna give him a pass on that. Sometimes people get a little too excited. It's only one time. If there was other times of Eddie Kingston just, stumbling and falling all over himself, then I would say, yeah, but I wouldn't do that. Body shaming Eddie Kingston is obviously wrong, but there are better ways to get that point across than body shaming the people doing it. Stop calling him fat, you fat, disgusting blob, is a pretty gross message to put out there. I'm seeing a lot of this too. You're fat. I bet you couldn't do what Eddie Kingston can do. I'm like, I'm not getting paid to do it. All right. If I got paid to sit around and go to the gym, I would sit around and go to the gym. Shit, theoretically, I would want to increase the money that I'm making. If it incentivizes me to get in better shape, to work harder, I would do that. Eddie Kingston was in worse shape than he is in now, though. When he first started, everybody was looking like, what the fuck is this? Because his cardio was completely not good. I think he still had a decent match with Cody. But what really got people interested in him was his promo skill. And people was kind of riding with the promo skill. And that's really what's gotten over with a lot of people is how well he talks and how genuine he is. That gets him over with people. But then you have to sit through these matches. Then you have to sit through these matches. And outside of all the matches of all the, and then he becomes basically another deathmatch wrestler where it's not about the athleticism. It becomes, can we do freak show shit like stab each other in the head? Can we do barbed wire and explosions and all kinds of stuff? Because having a straight up wrestling match, Eddie Kingston is kind of like mid. Same thing with Moxley. Moxley is also mid without all of the gimmicks. And it's really weird. Body shaming is such a soft fucking phrase. People calling Eddie fat and the internet is mad about it. Not Eddie Kingston himself. It's just wrestling fans trying to be relevant and hope Eddie likes or retweets their post. Eddie Kingston's probably not paying attention to this shit. Hopefully he has. I know that he made comments about himself, and I read it earlier. I think that was in response to his people talking about him and Adam Cole. Since this whole thing has started, I don't think anybody has said anything about Eddie Kingston. Some of the non-athletes talking about physiques is so hilarious. Yes, it's because, people who are not athletes should not be talking about athletes. Therefore, we should get rid of ESPN. Because, how can you, who never played professional sports, talk about professional sports? Roger Ebert and, what was the guy, what was that? Siskel and Ebert? You've never made movies. Like, this is really, really bad. This is the kind of language that people use against Meltzer all the time, right? And then they defend Meltzer. Like, Meltzer has never run a wrestling promotion. Meltzer has never worked a match. Meltzer has never done any of the stuff that he critiques. And yet people take his word as gospel. Nobody ever just twists that and says, Meltzer, you never run a wrestling show. How do you know what the fuck success is? You never worked a match. How do you know what the fuck a good match is? You don't, all you did was listen to other people. It's like, well, he has opinions. He's a guy, he can have an opinion. He's watched a lot of wrestling. He has an opinion. Okay, fine. Well, then, as people who have watched a lot of wrestling, we're looking at Eddie Kingston and we're saying to ourselves, probably not. He looks like the Brooklyn Brawler, Puerto Rican version. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sold on that. All right, not so sold on it. And again, what is legitimate criticism to AEW? When is it okay to finally criticize somebody? You know, it's ridiculous. It's very, very strange. Oh God. Ask them about Mankind. Oh, so somebody's talking about Mick Foley. Mick Foley's style was very similar to what we talk about with Eddie Kingston. Mick Foley was never an in-shape guy. And we saw the kind of career he had to have in order to get where he was. He could cut very convincing promos. He did a great job with his microphone work, but he was never a body guy. And so he was able to carve out a nice little piece of the space for WWE for himself, but he was never going to go too far without destroying his body. And it wasn't until, like, you know, they decided to turn Mankind into a cartoon character where he does comedy skits all the time that it actually, you know, took a light and load, you know, off his body. Think about every great Mick Foley match you can think of. How many of them did not involve Mick Foley throwing himself on the floor as hard as he possibly could eventually? Every great Mick Foley match includes him either losing a body part or him throwing himself on the floor as hard as he possibly could, or getting bashed in the head with something. That was the Mick Foley special. He jumped off shit, he got hit with stuff, and he fell a lot. And now he can barely walk today. Thank God he made a lot of money. He got his 5th set of teeth, maybe 10th. And he's in good shape. He's okay. You know, but he can barely move today. We don't want that for Eddie Kingston. Mick Foley is not a good role model for Eddie Kingston. You know, not when you have guys who worked as long as Foley. Look at Sting. Sting was a body guy. Sting looked fantastic in his prime. Sting can still jump off shit at 60. He can still jump off shit at 60. Foley was 50 something and we can barely move. No, we want more Stings. People who could at least continue to contribute at some point in their 60s. You know, maybe they got some bangs and bruises because they've been doing this for a long time. But they still can get out there. They still look good. Sting is in better shape than Eddie Kingston. And Eddie Kingston is like, what, 2/3 of Sting's age? Like, come on, man. There's no reason for it. Because if Eddie Kingston is in bad shape at 40, what is he going to look like at 50? And my God, what is he going to look like at 60? You know, and it's like, we want the guy to continue to be around for a long time, you know, especially if you really get over with everybody, they're going to want to see you more and more. So I don't know, man. I'm just saying it makes a lot of sense to somebody like me, but to a lot of people, they think that you're doing good. I got to protect Eddie Kingston. I'm like, no, you don't. No, you don't. It's okay to just say, look, it's all right for guys to not be in the best of shape, but you can do better. Eddie Kingston's body type was like the prototype before the 1980s. And even then, it wasn't until maybe the 2000s when we had the more steady stream of bland meatheads coming in and out of WWE. Interestingly enough, add to this that this person is responding to a picture thread of guys who are pro wrestlers who don't have, let's say, the best of shape. We've already talked about Mick Foley, who of course is on this list. We already talked about Dusty, who is on this list. But this person also put the Sandman and Abdullah the Butcher. All right. Abdullah the Butcher. Have you seen an Abdullah the Butcher match that did not involve him bleeding and stabbing people? Nobody just ever says that Abdullah was a great wrestler. No, nobody ever said that. He had a great persona. He had a great gimmick. He really made you believe that he was fighting in these bloody, vicious brawls. And usually it was just like the Sheik. They didn't have wrestling matches per se. It was more like bloody, vicious brawls in which you walked away with your forehead looking like you had been run through a cheese grater or a lawnmower or something. And that was pretty much how he led his career. Eddie Kingston idolizes hardcore Japanese wrestling, not Abdullah the Butcher. So when you look at the guys that Eddie Kingston wants to be like, the Kenta Kobashis and the Misawas, or, those guys, they weren't shredded but they were in shape. Okay. They were built for cardio. Even at the age Eddie Kingston is now, they could still go because they were built for cardio. Hell, some guys in Japan are 50 and 60, they can still go. Because they're built for cardio. Eddie Kingston is not built for cardio. The Sandman, much like Abdullah the Butcher, never really known as a great wrestler. He was a garbage wrestler who bashed beer cans against his head. Like, the most exciting part of the Sandman match was his entrance. How many times have we heard, oh man, Sandman, man, that entrance was fantastic. How many people actually remember a Sandman match? I can remember Sandman matches because I remember storylines. Okay? But nobody ever got off their seat and was like, the Sandman was a great wrestler. People will say he's a great character. Just like people are saying Eddie Kingston was a great character. But nobody ever thought that the Sandman was like this phenomenal professional wrestler. Because he's had his opportunities in WWE. He has later years. So let's not give him too much credit for that. And I guess you could say he was also later years WCW. When he was wrestling as Hardcore Hack in WCW. He never made waves anywhere. It's like you can say that these guys are prototypes for Eddie Kingston, sure. But Dusty is dead currently. He died in his 70s, so. Abdullah the Butcher, he's still alive, but I don't think too much about his health. Sandman, he fell off the face of the planet. Outside of the occasional pop-up here and there, maybe on TNA or something like that, who really is, hyped over seeing the Sandman? And Mick Foley, of course, is Mick Foley. He was an Attitude Era staple. This is another one. Eddie Kingston is fat. He cannot be an athlete. And then there's, of course, a picture thread. There's Yokozuna, who I've talked about already. Bam Bam Bigelow, who I've already talked about. Vader, who I've already talked about. And Earthquake, who is of the same vein as Vader and Bam Bam Bigelow, as a big dude who has a motor. So, look, Yokozuna, if he wrestled like Eddie Kingston, would have hurt people all the time. Nobody has a problem with big dudes. That's the thing. Like, nobody talks shit about Umaga being fat. Nobody really talks shit about Rikishi being fat. People are talking about Eddie Kingston because of his cardio. People are looking at him and saying, this is not athletic stuff. People love Samoa Joe, who is fat. People loved him when he was fat in TNA. When Scott Steiner was calling him fat, he was fat then. People loved Samoa Joe. It is not about Eddie Kingston being fat. Eddie Kingston is fat, but it's not about Eddie Kingston being fat. It's about him being unathletic. It's about his chops not looking very good. It's about his footwork not looking very good. It's about him throwing Chris Jericho on his head. It's about all kinds of stuff that could be easily fixed if he worked on his cardio and his conditioning. Wow. Wow, you're really body shaming the guy. Body shaming. Now they're bringing up Otis. Hey, Otis is an Olympic athlete, though. Like, he was an actual wrestler. Like, legit. You can be an actual wrestler and be as big as Otis. You could be a strong man and be as big as Otis. But that's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about just a guy being fat. It's a straw man to think that we're just talking about him being fat. Him being fat is just the funny part. Because if he was unathletic and skinny, nobody would say, they'd probably post pictures of X-Pac and, Amazing Red or some shit like that, where you can be super skinny and still be a good athlete. It's like, look at this shit. You're arguing against a position nobody's made, It's very, here Bully Ray, Dusty didn't need abs. but he still had abs. You have abdominals, just covered in blubber. You still have abdominal muscles, whether they're covered in fat or not. Oh God. Bully Ray, who I always make fun of, he lost weight. You know, when he was being pushed in TNA, he lost weight. Do you remember the transition from Bubba Ray or Brother Ray when he was fat and out of shape and Team 3D could barely get anything done because they both were just sucking wind as much as possible in those damn matches? They were completely out of shape. In order to get his push, or well, in response to his push, he got into shape. He jacked his arms up. He got into tremendous shape. I don't understand why Bully Ray is now all of a sudden, well, he could be a Dusty Rhodes type. Like, come on. Come on. Are you serious? When it was your time on the barbecue and you knew things were getting tough because people were out expecting better matches out of you because you're going to be positioned as being a top guy in this company, you went and got in better shape. You did that. That was a decision you made. That was smart for your career, because now people remember Bully Ray. You don't remember, they remember the Dudley Boys more, of course. But when they think of Bully Ray and you being a world champion, they know that you actually looked pretty good and you wrestled in a shirt. So if you didn't have like the best abdominal area, you still kind of covered it up a little bit and your arms looked nice. So it was a little smoke and mirrors there. So why him jumping out of the bushes to say, well, Dusty didn't need it? It's like, well, is Dusty going to be the prototype for everybody who comes into wrestling and looks like a slob? Well, you can look like, I don't know, some dude who is working at the Wrestle Festival. And he comes out 450 pounds, bland and completely disgusting. Well, Dusty didn't have to do it. Like, no, nobody would do that. Nobody would give him that credit. Nobody would say, well, he looks like a pro wrestler. He's a big fat guy. Nobody would say that. Nobody would go to a random barbecue or a random park, find some giant dude with a beard and say, well, you're a big fat guy. You want to be a pro wrestler? Nobody would do that because it's stupid. Responses to that Bully Ray tweet, though. We got to talk about it. All right. This is going longer than I thought. I guess the AEW money finally coming in. Dusty was also an athlete. And even though he was getting bigger, he still kept being an athlete and hitting the gym. Kingston seems like he's allergic to working out. He's gassed before the bell rings. Should be a manager at best. Another response. Neither does Kingston. People hating on him. I said, fuck that. This man is a hard-hitting, brawling type of wrestler and a great promo talker. But here's the thing. Eddie Kingston isn't really a hard, brawling kind of guy. He tries to have Japanese-style work rate matches because that's what he idolizes doing. His best stuff is when he's brawling because he can walk and brawl. In fact, that's kind of one of the easiest matches to have. Is to just punch each other a couple of times, hit each other with some stuff, and stumble around. That's really what ECW was. If you couldn't really work, you could always fall back on, I'm going to hit you with this thing, go down, and sell it. That's what those bad breed matches are all about. And, what was it, Ian and Axel Rotten? They would just hit each other with stuff, bleed all over the place, and flop around in their own blood. And people would say, wow, those are great matches. It's like, these two fat, unathletic fucks. All they did was hit each other with stuff. That's all GCW, like, blood deathmatch guys are. They're guys who, maybe they can throw a clothesline, maybe they can hit the ropes every once in a while, but most of the matches are them stabbing each other in the head or getting hit with some inanimate object. I'm sorry. I'm not impressed. Anybody could do that, okay? I understand the smoke and mirrors of that, but anybody could do that. Somebody says, didn't you mock Adam Cole, though? Why is it only fat guys who don't need abs? Ooh. See, I didn't know that. I walked into something that I thought was interesting. I'm just going to start watching UFC and boxing. Wrestling is dead to me after this. Interestingly enough, that was X-Pac's response, is that he posted Big Country Roy Nelson, who I talked about when I was talking about Adam Cole, is that you can be a bigger dude and still be kind of successful. But Big Country Roy Nelson was almost always made fun of. And even though he had some measure of success in the UFC, it was always understood that in a fight against better heavyweights, higher ranking world champion level heavyweights, they would run circles around him, or they would take him down and grapple him until he damn near died of dehydration. And they knew it because they're professionals. And they can look and say, this guy's cardio is not good. He's dangerous as hell for the first 2 minutes because he's going to come in there and throw bombs, big hands. He's going to throw them. But if you take him down and you wrestle him, his heart's almost going to burst in his chest. And you will hear that through commentary all the time. You will hear coaches say it all the time. They did not. UFC is brutal. They're not like this pussy wrestling fan base. They know what it takes for you to succeed, right? The NFL, they're brutal. If you're a fat offensive lineman or an offensive tackle or something like that, and you're shitty at your job and you're not athletic and your cardio is garbage, you're not going to be put on the team. They're going to put you on the bench. They're not going to feel bad for you because you're a nice guy and you got charisma. They're going to say, well, look, you either need to get in shape or you're not going to be on the fucking team. Now I know that wrestling is different. It's an art form. But we need to have some of the same standards where if you can't really go or if you look awful, we need to be able to say, look, we like you, but enough of this. And WWE did it. They did when they sent Keith Lee back to the PC, and that was the whole big thing. How can you say Keith Lee needs more training? Keith Lee is the greatest. He's so good. And then he came to AEW, and what happened? They put him in a tag team because his cardio was shit. And it took a while for people to notice it because people were wrapped up in how athletic he can be, when he was within that right frame of pocket. And you can be a big dude like Keith Lee. And it's actually harder for you to stay in shape because you're an endomorph and you're a big dude. People don't want you to lose too much weight because if you do, you stop being a big guy. That's what happened to Gunther, right? You lose some of your intimidation factor when you lose too much weight. But if you gain too much weight, you're a fat slob and we can't do anything with you. That's the thing where, as somebody who tried to play football and you hear people talk about that, you talk to offensive linemen and defensive tackles or whatever, these guys have a range of weight that they have to be in order to be considered in their prime spot. They have to be athletic, have to have good cardio, but you have to weigh a certain amount of weight. And if you lose too much, you lose your spot because we can't do nothing with a 190-pound offensive tackle. We can't do anything about that. You lose damn near 150 pounds, okay, you've lost your job. If you gain 150 pounds, you've also lost your job. So you have to be able to stay within a certain range, right? And offensive tackles and defensive tackles and stuff like that have talked about this, how hard it is to stay within that range. When people are saying, okay, you might be losing a little too much weight, we need you to gain some weight. And then, okay, wait, maybe now you gained too much weight. This is the situation Yokozuna was in and Vader, right? Where Vince was saying, okay, we signed you because you're a big dude, you're athletic, you can do all this stuff, but maybe now you've gained too much weight. We want you to start cutting back on the weight. And then it becomes, well, they were fat when he hired them. And it's like, yeah, but now he thinks they're too fat. He wants them to slim down a little bit. Get your weight under control. Mark Henry, Big Show, same thing. All we're asking is Eddie Kingston, who is not even as big as those guys were, is to do the same thing. It should be easier for him. Now he's younger. No, maybe a little bit older than when they were asked to. Like when Big Show was being sent to OVW and stuff, he wasn't 40 yet. And I'm taking into account everything. Eddie Kingston's age, that he's probably not used to working out, and having the amount of pressure on him that's on him now. He used to work in the indies where this kind of stuff doesn't matter because it's the indies. And you can come out there with 4 fingers and 1 eyeball and, nothing matters because it's not going to be on TV and people are going to cheer pretty much everything. Now you're on TV. People are looking at you who, maybe have never seen you before, or they're not as generous as the people who just come to the wrestling matches because they want to see wrestling. They're a little bit more higher standard. And maybe the standards are unrealistic because everybody can't look like Randy Orton or Theory. True. But you could do better. And WWE still pushes guys who don't look that way. WWE still pushes guys who aren't shredded, you know? Now, maybe not currently, because there's almost everybody who's carrying a belt nowadays is shredded. But they have a history of, really getting behind big dudes. Even guys who are endomorphs, like an Eddie Kingston, Now, how long that lasts is up to you. Because, Kevin Owens had a big thing about his weight. That's why he wrestled in a t-shirt. He may have been at WrestleMania, though. And the guy had, he's got a motor. He's got an engine. There's no doubt that I think that Eddie Kingston couldn't work a match that's 25 minutes. He couldn't do it straight. All right? Kevin Owens, though, I believe he could. Dusty, I believe he could. Foley, probably not. 25 minutes straight, pure physicality without him throwing himself all over the floor to get pops and stuff like that, probably not. Without blowing his ears off, probably not. Vader probably could. Bam Bam probably could. So you have to take into account all the different types of guys that we're talking about here. And comparing Eddie Kingston to all of these different guys without, looking at their resume is unfair to both Eddie Kingston and the guy. It says, no, what Dusty did was the territory system to hone his skills, something we have sorely lacked for now. Probably because WWE has his tradition of taking the cool new idea and presenting it better than anybody can. 80s copying AWA, 90s copying ECW. The 80s copying AWA? Are you crazy? AWA wasn't doing shit like the WWF. WWF was a cartoon in the 80s. Somebody said neither did the Honky Tonk Man, which is true. WWE did make an entire career of the Honky Tonk Man, being in a sort of endomorph who was, not the greatest body guy in the world. But how many of your favorite matches are Honky Tonk Man matches? He was a great character. But, do you really have a lot of great Honky Tonk Man matches? No. He was a guy. He was just there. And he wasn't in terrible shape either. Honky Tonk Man could go. When he was given the opportunity, he really could go. Like his matches with Macho Man, matches with Ricky Steamboat. He could go. He was an endomorph. He was a guy who was never going to get skinny. It just wasn't going to happen. But he was still in pretty good shape for a guy his size. Eddie Kingston is not. And it's okay to say that. And it should be all right to say that. It's very weird. And I think this is the Society Movies, the Barroom podcast. They help me out a lot. Not every out of shape wrestler is Dusty Rhodes, which is absolutely the best, simplest way to put it. Everybody thinks that if you're fat, all of a sudden you're Dusty Rhodes. No. It's kind of ridiculous that we need to say that, but it's really weird. Okay. Unless I see something else here that's going to be very interesting, I don't see the need to continue going in circles about this. This one is actually pretty good. And it's pretty funny too. The thing that really bothers these abstinent, untouched Vincels about Eddie Kingston is not just the way he looks, but it's that Eddie fucking Kingston has the sheer confidence to show up on primetime TV and pay-per-view and be like, yeah, this is me. This is how I look. Deal with it. Fat pride. I'm fat and I'm proud. And if that's your thing, man, go for it. Go for it. Sure. He wears a sleeveless and short basketball shorts to wrestle. That's the same thing I wear to mow the lawn. That shit kicks ass. And these guys, yeah, that's awesome. It's awesome, bro. You look like a trucker. That's great, man. That's fantastic. You remind me of me, man. You're showing everybody I don't have to be in shape to do anything, man. That's great. Thumbs up, bro. Enjoy your heart attack. Like, what? Like, come on, man. Don't do this to these guys. Oh, Eddie can lose his shirt in front of 10,000 people and 1 million on TV and be like, let's fucking scrap. Meanwhile, these schlubs complaining won't take off their t-shirt at night next to their Alexa Bliss photo they taped onto their body pillow. What are you talking about? I have no idea. I have no idea what these guys are talking about now. To everyone shitting on Eddie Kingston for his body, being ripped doesn't equal being healthy. He's done some crazy shit the last few months. I'll bet some of you get winded tying your shoes. Well, nobody ever said that being ripped equals being healthy. What people are saying is that he's fat, and it shows in his matches. That's what people are saying. It's a statement not just on body type, but it's also a statement on his match quality. A lot of people are just not impressed with what they have seen from Eddie Kingston, despite the fact that he has this really great tough talk. And it is tough talk, and it is street talk, and it is charismatic, and it is very good. But then you see him, and you realize why you don't see street dudes get involved in pro wrestling, and why you don't see street dudes, too deep in athletics. Because it takes a level of discipline that they usually don't have. And that's really, I think that's a good line to close on. If you believe that wrestling takes absolutely no discipline whatsoever to really excel in, then you will accept anything as a wrestler. And we've gotten this far. It's not just wrestling fans either. Like we've seen, like if you look into a comic book, like a modern comic book, and you see like some of the shittiest art you've ever seen in your life, and then people will say, well, you can't draw. It's like, well, look, there's a certain standard that I'm looking to get here when I pay $4 or whatever for a comic book. There's a certain standard I expect from actors and actresses and wrestlers and people that I see on TV and things that I'm going to purchase. There's a certain standard I expect. And this applies to everyone. Everybody's going to have a certain level of standards for the things that they're out to purchase with their hard-earned money. And if you cannot meet that standard, they can tell you what that standard should be. So if you really want their money, you should make the overture in trying to get it. So if you see that people are, and this is what got wrestling to the point of being body guys anyway. People saw that body guys were getting where they wanted to go. They saw Hulk Hogan, they saw the Ultimate Warrior, and they saw Lex Luger, and they said, you know what? I have to get into better shape if I want to be like those guys. And so they did. It wasn't an edict passed down that you absolutely had to get shredded in order to be a top guy. But the guys who put in the work, who were disciplined, were rewarded for it. And some of them cheated. Hogan did, Warrior did, Savage did. They did steroids. They cheated. Some guys didn't do that. But there was an incentive structure in place that if you wanted to get to a certain level in this business, you had to get in better shape. You had to do more. You had to be disciplined. You had to put your foot down. You had to be willing to go pedal to the metal. Flair set this standard too in the NWA. You had to be willing to go. You had to be willing to do something. Now, those standards are gone. Anytime you talk about somebody being too skinny, anytime you talk about somebody being too fat, they try to remind you of some successful person that was skinny or fat. It's like, come on, man. All people are saying is, this is the standard, my standards. You can say, look, this person falls below my standards and I'm not interested. And now all of a sudden people are demanding that you lower your standards too. It's like, fuck it. No. Eddie Kingston is above and beyond my standards for a verbal professional. I will always give him credit for his verbal skills. But he is below standard in wrestling, in actual wrestling. I don't care how many Japanese wrestlers he mimics in the ring. Or, I remember seeing that from such and such, and Misawa versus such and such, the tag team match in Tokyo Dome. I don't care. Because I'm not a mark for that shit. When I see him trying to do that stuff and he's more winded than his opponent, I'm like, no. That match with that Takashita guy was terrible. The guy was working. Like, if you really wanted to get people to believe that Eddie Kingston was good, he would have had to hit that Takashita guy pretty damn hard. But those back chops looked like they couldn't bust a little girl's nose. They looked like shit. It's like all people are saying is, Eddie Kingston, you can do better. We want you to do better. Can you? Are you going to take up the challenge and discipline yourself to do better? Or is it better and okay, I'm fine just the way I am? Which is sort of the mantra of this generation, that you're perfect just the way that you are. And if anybody asks you to do anything more, they're being unfair to you, and they're bullying you, and they're body shaming and all this other kind of stuff. It's like, well, it is mediocrity, incentivized, and I can't do it. I like Eddie Kingston, but he can do better. All right, let me know what you guys think. Like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later, man. Peace out.